prices of food and other agriculture prices, and how are they doing at this moment? It seems that a lot has changed since the beginning of the year in terms of how some of the staples that we buy in the market, how they were trading at the beginning of the year, say in January, and now that we are in the third quarter of the year. Okwayemi Oguntade is an economic analyst with the Financial Derivatives Company Limited, and she joins me on the program. Good morning, Okwayemi.
Good morning.
It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, tell us, we've seen that prices have moved significantly from the beginning of the year to now. Okay, that has been fueled by inflation. We saw how inflation has also been moving in upward direction. So how has this impacted on food, basically?
Well, what we've seen in the commodities market, like you've mentioned, is prices have been increasing since the beginning of the year. And how this has impacted on food is that you see, a couple of commodities have, for instance, if you look at rice, as at the beginning of the year, it was about 8,000 towards 13,000. And then now, looking at it right now, it's about 19,000. And then you also have the issue of, the tuta absoluta in the month of April, and you also have the planting season. So all this taken together have contributed to the increase in prices we've seen in the commodities market. More recently, we've seen that the transportation costs have increased. At the beginning of the year, the price of a litre of diesel was about 130 naira for a litre, and then now in the market it's about 195, and it went as high as 215 so far this year. So all these things taken together, the reasons why we're seeing food prices increase
now,
in the market.
If you look at the numbers, we just have that slide on the screen, and we saw how the prices moved. For instance, tomatoes, yellow, 8,000 naira per basket, and at the moment it's 45,000.
Oh no, that was at the moment it isn't 45,000. It has gone back down. The reason why we saw it going as high as 45,000 was because of the tuta absoluta. So we had scarcity of tomatoes in the market. That was between April to June. But now we've seen prices have stabilized and they've gone back to about, I think, 12,000. Towards 8,000 towards 12,000 for a basket. And so yes, that's what we're seeing in the market.
The last time we spoke about the commodities market, we talked about the issue of adjustments. Nigerians are beginning to adjust the spending patterns. The appetites have been also modified.
Yeah.
Now, to what extent has that impacted on the choices of food that they buy?
Okay, so if you're looking at the commodities market, on the table, we indicated that there's some commodities that are inelastic and some of them that are elastic. So now, essentially, with the inelastic commodities, when there's a change in the price of the good, you see a little change in quantity demanded, because these are commodities that are more like necessities, something that commodities that consumers consume frequently. But for elastic commodities, they have a higher level of substitutes, and consumers don't consume them as often as the inelastic commodities. So what we've seen is, even though we've seen prices of all commodities increase across board, we've seen that the prices of inelastic commodities are increasing more than the elastic commodities. For instance, this week we've seen the price of beans has increased from 25,000 last week to 30,000 this week, and we've also seen sugar increasing as well, and these are inelastic commodities. So essentially, consumers have responded to this increase in prices by trying to cut down on the quantity demanded for inelastic commodities, because they still have to consume them. And if you're looking at the reduction in quantity demanded, it's more significant for elastic commodities than inelastic commodities.
Perhaps you could explain further what elastic and inelastic commodities are.
Like I said earlier, elastic commodities are commodities that a change in price leads to a greater change in the quantity demanded, because there are substitutes available that consumers can easily switch to, while inelastic commodities are more like necessities. If there's a change in the price, there's just a minor change in the quantity demanded, because they're necessities. So even if prices increase, you still have to consume them anyway.
It doesn't change the appetite for them.
It reduces the quantity demanded marginally. Like for instance, if you're looking at an example would be petrol. I mean, you need fuel to to power your car, to power your generator. Even if we saw that the price of petrol increased from 86.50 to 145 naira for a liter, people are still consuming petrol because it's a necessity. But they have tried to kind of ration the amount of petrol they consume, but they are still consuming it anyways.
All right. So what's the outlook for the week?
Going forward, looking at what's happening in the commodities market, so far so good. There's no indication to suggest that we'll see prices tapering down. Elastic commodities are likely to remain flat, while inelastic commodities are subject to market realities.
Thank you so much, Opeyemi Oguntade.
Thank you for having me.
Economic analyst with the Financial Derivatives Company Limited.